As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate. Today I want to talk about my top 5 2023 releases. It was really hard to narrow this down to a top 5 because I do think that 2023 was a fantastic year for film. But I've gone through the list and everything that I have seen, I have a top 5. I do have to say there are a couple of movies that I really wanted to see that I haven't yet. Either they're not playing locally near me or they're just hard to come by. For example, I still need to see American Fiction, Poor Things, All of Us Strangers. Oh, and the one about Nazis, Hold. And I also need to see The Zone of Interest, which I cannot find for the life of me anywhere. You would think that this movie isn't actually real. Okay, so I have my top 5, but I want to give 2 honorable mentions. The first one being Scream 6. This was directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. And this was one of my favorite films of last year. It didn't quite make the top 5 for me, but I just really do think that the Scream movies can do no wrong. They are always camp, funny, scary. They understand their own genre and like they understand the nuances of something like Scream that is making fun of the horror genre, making fun of society, but also effectively scary. I love them, all of them. I have not found a Scream movie that I haven't liked, so I had to include it. It's a shame that they took a complete dump on their own franchise by firing Melissa Barrera, so RIP to this amazing series, because it's over now. But it was great while it lasted. Ooh, okay, this next honorable mention, it was right there with my number 5. I had to really think about it. There's one thing that I think set it back from being my number 5, but anyways, it's Society of the Snow. It's directed by J.A. Bayona. So Society of the Snow takes place in I think like 1972, and it's about this rugby team that gets on a flight to Chile, and then the flight crashes into a glacier, and it's in the heart of the Andes Mountains, I believe. And this is obviously based on a true story. They crash and it follows the team as they're trying to survive and everyone that was on the plane. It was absolutely heartbreaking, very, very hard to watch. The thing that set it back from being my number 5 is the fact that this is one of those movies where it's like, it hurts so bad to watch it that you never want to watch it again. It's beautiful, it's stunning, it deserves recognition, it deserves awards. I never want to look at it again. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that this will be nominated for Best Foreign Film for the Oscars. I'm really hoping at least. And I think that if it does get nommed, it's going to have some tight competition with Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest. But I would be very happy if this won the category because I think it deserves some recognition. At least maybe it'll get sound design, I don't know, but it is so well done. It's really fucking sad and haunting, and it's one of those things where you don't know how they survived this. How did they do it? What would you do if you were them? I don't know. I don't think I would have made it because they were continued to get hit over and over again with the worst possible conditions and luck. And they managed to push through it. And some of them actually managed to make it out. And that's just wild to me that they overcame these incredibly tough circumstances. And I think the reason that we care so much in the film is through the acting. It's incredibly well done. And I think that the dynamic between all of the guys in the actual film, they did a really good job with the chemistry. Everybody felt like it was a brotherhood, and you felt like they loved each other, and it was genuine. It wasn't just a bunch of actors in a plane trying to survive. So well done all around. I really liked Society of the Snow, and I would recommend watching it. It's on Netflix. All right, we got to get into my number 5, and it's going to be really hard to talk about it without just losing it. It's Past Lives. It is directed by Celine Song, and it follows Nora and Hae Sung, who were, I guess, childhood best friends and sweethearts. They had little crushes on each other. They were with each other constantly, BFFs till the end, and they, I think, had plans on like growing up and marrying each other. Like, you know, that childhood, you're 8 years old and you're like, I want to marry this other 8-year-old. Like, you are my soul person. That's what it was. And Nora's family has to immigrate from South Korea to Canada, and so she has to leave Hae Sung behind, and it feels so jarring with her leaving, and it feels like they didn't really get a proper goodbye. So when she leaves, 20 years later, they reunite. They talk about, I guess, what could have been, and destiny and love, and oh my God, this movie broke me. You know, at first, you're a little bit like, okay, this is feeling cheesy, because they managed to reconnect when they're both like college age, and they reconnect, find each other on Skype, and it feels like y'all didn't communicate for that long, and then suddenly you find each other and you're talking every day. It felt a little weird, but I got used to it. I got used to that feeling of like, you know, when you think you have a soulmate and then you disappear from their lives and you find them again. I'm sure you would become obsessed with like wanting to talk to them all the time. So when they finally meet up, which is even later than when they first reconnect, it's just, oh my God, it is really, really hard, because Nora has established herself now in New York. And so she is not the girl that she was when she was 8 years old. And Hae Sung has to come to terms with Nora being different and not being the little kid that he knew and loved. And so you see the heartbreak from Nora as someone who has made a life for herself in New York, thinking about what could have been. And then you see Hae Sung, who is feeling a little bit lost and has a lot of investment in Nora, and being able to go and visit her, see that she's established. He has to come to terms with like, this may not work out. He may not get that happily ever after that he thought that he would have with Nora. Oh my God, it was really difficult. But if you let me pull up the cast. So I want to make sure I give my credit, because Joe. Obviously, our actors and actresses that play Nora and Hae Sung did a great job. Both of them. Greta Lee, TOU, like y'all killed it. We got to give a special shout out to our boy, Arthur, played by John Magaro, who was so vulnerable. He plays Nora's husband, who is trying to be supportive as Nora wants to go seek out Hae Sung. You know, he's coming to visit. She explains to Arthur their whole background and history, and she's not going to lie to him. And she says, like, I just want to see what this is. And Arthur is trying to be supportive. But the raw insecurity that Arthur has, as he feels like the villain in this epic fairy tale where he's standing in the way between these two childhood lovers that now are meeting up again. He sees it. He's very aware, and he is very open and vulnerable with Nora about how he's feeling. And oh my God, he broke my heart in a lot of ways. And he's not a perfect man by any means, but that was really difficult. Here's the thing, those three actors, they're all very dynamic, and the relationships between each character, it's very different, but you're very empathetic for all of those different relationships and connections. It is not one of those situations where you are very one-sided and, it doesn't matter. I want Nora and Hae Sung to be together. I want Nora and Arthur to be together. Maybe they should all just go their separate ways. Like, you don't have a camp that you're in. It makes you feel the heartbreak and the freaking devastation of all of these people being connected, and not knowing what to do. There are some beautiful shots in this film, absolutely stunning. I cannot believe that this is Song's first film. because the shots that are in here, some of them just look masterful. They look like this is something that Celine's been doing her entire life, like she is a well-established director, because they are beautiful. But what I think really sends this film over the edge for me and makes it so good and worthy of being in my top 5 is the placement of the actors in certain shots. They're so intentional where she places her actors. There is a specific shot that I'm thinking of, a specific scene where the 3 of them are at a bar. And this is Arthur's first time really meeting Hae-sung, and so are at this bar. It starts with Nora kind of translating for Hae-sung to Arthur. You know, if Hae-sung says something, she listens, she translates it to Arthur. Arthur says something, he understands Arthur. So it's like, that's where it is. And it's very much the 3 actors at the bar talking together. And then as the scene slowly builds and goes on, you see Nora shift and start to turn more towards Hae-sung. She starts having conversations strictly with Hae-sung in Korean, where Arthur is completely left out, and he's sitting at the bar watching the 2 of them have these conversations together that he's not a part of. And you can feel the heartbreak as he's watching the 2 of them, and he's seeing their connection, even though he has no idea what they're saying. Sometimes you wonder if maybe he does. It's the feeling of, I don't even need to know what you're talking about. I can see, looking at the 2 of you, how you feel. And watching the heartbreak between, you know, Arthur watching her, but also feeling that, oh my God, between Nora and Hae-sung as they're having these conversations that are very deep. And you feel for them, and watching the 2 of them, they're so interesting and captivating, but then you also feel for Arthur, and it's so complex. This film is so complex. I highly recommend it. It will break your heart, it will shatter you and punch you in the face, and it will have you thinking for sure. All right, my number 4 is one that it was not on my radar. I had no idea what it was until a friend recommended it to me, and it started getting nominated for a bunch of awards, so I was very interested to see what it was about. I'm so glad that I watched it, and it's Anatomy of a Fall. This is directed by Justine Triet. Hopefully I'm saying these names somewhat right. I apologize. Anatomy of a Fall follows our main character, Sandra, who is being suspected of murdering her husband. And the only person that was there at the time of the murder is her blind son, Daniel, who is played by Milo Machado Graner. Again, apologies for the mispronunciation. She is having to go through the process of going on trial and being hounded by lawyers to prove her innocence and to prove that she didn't murder her husband, while also having to deal with the death of her husband. And then you have her son, who's kind of caught up in the middle and is being brought into the circus act that can be a trial sometimes. What Anatomy of a Fall, to me, is really about is the complexity between relationships, couples, and that not everything is so black and white. Not everything is so easy to understand. The classic, you can't judge a book by its cover, applies here, because there's so much about Sandra's relationship with her husband. There's so much that we as an outsider, we don't know. And so when she's put on trial and she has to go through these very personal things that have happened between her and her husband, it's now being broadcasted, right? You have her son listening to these painful stories and and it's obviously changing the way he feels about his parents. The complexities just between Daniel and the trial itself. He now has like a caregiver who has to watch him during the trial to make sure that Sandra's not tainting his opinions or his story. And you also have the relationship between Sandra and her lawyer, who is a longtime friend, And so he is trying to obviously save her, but is also concerned about whether or not she did kill her husband. And so there's that moral dilemma between all of them. It's incredibly well acted. I know that we're probably going to see nominations for Sandra Hüller, and I think that that's totally warranted. Like, she deserves to be nominated. But man, I wish that Milo could get nominated too, because he was so goddamn good, riveting as Daniel, as this young boy, this young blind boy who is trying to figure out the truth between his parents and what happened. And I also want to give a special shout out to Snoop the dog, if you will, because that little bitch stole the show, stole the whole goddamn show. That is a top tier actor. If Snoop the dog could get nominated for an Oscar, deserves the win. There are a couple scenes with Snoop that actually I was like, I don't know that I can watch, because this is making me feel a lot of things, and I love him, and I would die for him. I'll say it. I think what Anatomy of the Fall does for me that makes it higher up on my list is just the conversation around it and around the complexities of relationships and the moral dilemmas that our characters are facing. I think it's a film that will stand the test of time. I loved it. All right, we are in the top three. The top three, I'm passionate about these. I'm so excited to talk to you about the top three. Ooh, oh, I gotta sit up a little bit more. All right, so my number 3 is The Holdovers. And this is a film, out of all of the films that I watched this year, out of my top 5, doesn't matter. The Holdovers is a film for everyone. This is a film that is cozy, comforting, sad, but also heartwarming. It is a film that anybody can watch and that anybody could love. And I think that there is a reason that it is so highly rated on Letterboxd. Hold on, let me pull it up real quick. So between the around 5,000, a little over 5,000 fans of this film, right? Average rating of 4.2. And there's a reason. It's because this film is so damn good. So it's directed by Alexander Payne, and it stars Paul Giamatti. We'll talk about him in a second. Dominic Sessa in arguably one of his first roles, if not his first, and he was so good. And then Divine Joy Randolph. And, okay, I love talking about this film. So, Paul Giamatti's character, Professor Hunnam, he's just this old, grouchy little professor of a man. He is that professor that walks around like wanting to send everybody to detention. He's very strict. He has very high expectations for his students, and they all hate him. So he works for a prep school. He gets assigned with having to deal with the boys who don't get to go home for Christmas. So, parents are on vacation. Maybe they don't have parents, whatever. They're the kids that don't have a place to go back to for the holidays. So he is assigned to take care of this group of boys. And he just so happens to form this very close relationship with kind of the head troublemaker, Angus Tully, who is a smartass. He's a brooding little teenager who fully didn't expect, by the way, to be here and be stuck at the school for holiday vacation. So he's already blowed about that. But you find that there is a lot of there's a lot going on in his life. He's a little bit damaged. He's gone through some stuff. And so the unlikely pairing and connection between the two of them is what makes a lot of this so heartwarming. But then you also have the head cook of the prep school, Mary Lamb, played by Divine, who stays back as well. And she had just lost a son in Vietnam. So this takes place, in the time of the Vietnam War. So she just lost her son. I believe this is the first Christmas that she is having without him. So you have Mary dealing with her own loss and her own struggles. And then you have Angus Tully, who's going through his own troubles. And then you have Paul Giamatti's character, who has his own troubles, but is very much the kind of guy that wants to push that away because he has this responsibility to the world. And through Mary and Angus, they kind of get him to put his guard down. We can go ahead and get out of the way that this film is just beautifully shot. It's crisp. It's cozy at the same time. There's this familiarity to it. It almost feels like a home movie in feeling, in the way that it's shot. And I think that was just such a smart choice. The way that they chose to film it. And if I'm incorrect, sue me, but I believe it was shot on film. If not, it was made to look like it was on film. You know, it's very grainy. Love it, love it, love it. Soundtrack was fantastic as well. All of those things are great, but this is a film that solely relies on its actors to bring the story alive and to make it so emotional and impactful. And it was, because with that like golden trifecta that we have here, it sealed the deal and it made this movie become a annual watch for me. I think this is something I'm gonna have to watch every December, because even though it's not really a Christmas movie, it just kind of takes place during Christmas time. The heartwarming, cozy, bittersweet feeling that it gives you is very reminiscent of Christmas time. Now, I fully expect Paul Giamatti to be nominated for Best Actor, and I think that it's well-deserved. I would actually be quite happy if he won, now that I think about it. He's got a little bit of competition with Cillian Murphy, but I think that if he won, I would be pleased. However, I think that Dominic Sessa deserves a nomination as well. For this being his first role, that's probably why he won't be nominated, among it being maybe some tight competition, but it's his first major role, and my God, was he fantastic. Or I think that he does a really good job of showing the complexity with his character and the inner turmoil that he faces with his relationship with his parents. There's a specific scene with his father where he goes to his father hopeful and very optimistic, and you can tell that he wants a specific thing out of it, and the moment that he doesn't get it, you see the light in his eyes change, and you can see and sense the disappointment just by looking at him. And he says nothing, but the way that his whole entire face shifts gives you goosebumps. It does, just thinking about it for me. But the star of the show here is Divine Joy Randolph. She is an absolute scene stealer, because she's good at showing the kind of blind happiness that you may have at Christmas time, where you feel like everybody deserves to be happy. Let's not talk about the shitty stuff in life because it's the holiday season. But also, she is a woman trying to come to terms with the death of her son, who died so young in the war. And so she wants to be able to remember him and talk about him. But it's finding that line where, how much can I talk about him without breaking down? And how do I move on and be happy? That is just so hard to watch. And there's a very specific scene where they're at a Christmas party and she's playing music, some old Christmas music, old music that she and her son would bond over. And she's reminiscing on how much he loved this music. And somebody comes over to try to change it because they don't think that the music is right for the party. So they're like, oh, I'm going to put this on. And the snap between her happy, nostalgic feeling that she has to when someone wants to change the music, that scene was riveting, and it actually took my breath away. I had to pause the film just so I could collect myself and then press play, because I cried. I cried. It was, oh my God. I cannot recommend The Holdovers enough. And like I said, out of every movie that I've watched this year, this is a film that anybody can watch. Anybody can watch The Holdovers and they will like it. So if you're watching this and you have not seen The Holdovers, you can watch it. You should watch it. I believe it's on Peacock. You will love it. All right, BB, we are on our number 2. Oh my God, how am I going to even... So with this top 2, I went back and forth for hours trying to decide which one was my number 1. It was really hard for me because both of these films, in my opinion, are flawless. Both of them. Not a flaw in sight. Perfect films. Perfect cinema. Both of them will be nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, and if either one of them wins in those respective categories, I'll be happy. But my number 2 is from my boy, And it's Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Martin Scorsese. So, Killers of the Flower Moon was adapted. It's based on Killers of the Flower Moon book, which I now have downloaded. I need to read it because this movie makes you want to learn so much more about what happened. But essentially, this is about 1920s Oklahoma. The Osage Nation was once thriving because they have oil that's been discovered on their land, and so they have a lot of money. However, the Osage people start to get murdered one by one, and nothing is being done about it. There are these very clear, in my opinion, deaths where you very clearly know that they have been murdered, but they are covered up. Cause of death is something simple on paper, and it's erased. It's like that person was never there. And the Osage people are fucking tired of it. They're tired of seeing their people die. And so they have to kind of take it into their own hands to get the FBI involved. And the FBI finally comes in, starts to unravel the mystery of what's happening. Here's what I'm going to say right from the beginning. I think that Martin often gets this criticism with his works where they say that he is glamorizing criminal activity, that he's glamorizing bad people making bad choices, a la Wolf of Wall Street. And I can make a whole other video dissecting that critique and why I think that it's completely wrong and a misinterpretation of his works. But with that critique, I feel like with Killers of the Flower Moon, you cannot sit here and tell me that he was glorifying the behavior of these shitty people. Not only do we have two very popular actors just within Scorsese films, and Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro in this film playing shitty people, but Scorsese does a great job here of really not holding back a punch and showing how stupid, ugly, disgusting Ernest is, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. He shows the cold, snake-like, menacing behavior in Robert De Niro's character, who is William Hale. And Hale is considered like the king of the Osage Mountains. He's this, he's like the white guy of the community who is constantly giving money to build schools, to build community centers, libraries, whatever, what have you. Really trying to show, like, I am such a good guy. You guys need me. You love me because look at all the things that I'm doing for you. Yet, spoiler alert, he's a very shitty person doing terrible, awful people, killing Osage people. I don't feel like I need to hold back spoilers for this because this is a true story. You can Google it. This is something that actually happened. I don't need to hide anything from you here. William Hale is a terrible person who directly and indirectly killed who knows how many Osage people. But you have these two characters, and like I said, Scorsese does not hold anything back. He does not glamorize these two people. He does not make them redeemable. I've heard the argument that Leonardo DiCaprio's character, that there is a little bit of redeemability between him and his relationship with Lily Gladstone's character Molly. I think that's totally incorrect. I think that Scorsese shows the truth in the fact that Ernest and Molly in real life had a relationship. They were married. There was a connection there. However, he very quickly shows you, yeah, there's a connection there, but Ernest is killing her family. But Ernest is sabotaging Molly and all of her sisters and her mother. He is actively involved in breaking and destroying Molly's spirit. His love is delusional, and he's a puppy dog for William Hale. And I think that Scorsese does a really good job of showing that. I think that he also does a really good job of making this film feel like our main character and our main focus is Molly. And we have to talk about Lily Gladstone because goddamn, if she doesn't win the Oscar for Best Actress, what are we doing here? What has this all been about? Because she was fantastic. She's understated. Molly is a very smart woman who knows from the jump what Ernest is about, right? She can sense that Ernest is someone who wants to be with her because she's rich, because she has money. Her family has money. She gets this from the jump, but there's something about him that kind of keeps her attracted to him, and she wants to explore this connection, being fully aware of his intentions, but she thinks that he's also a little bit of an idiot. So I think in Molly's head, she believes that she can kind of keep him on a leash, which, unfortunately is not the case. And I think with time, she starts to be suspecting of not necessarily Ernest, but of his uncle, William Hale. The things that happen to Molly and her family and the Osage people are extremely hard to watch. And again, I think Martin does a really good job of showing the brutality without being egregious. He shows the coldness and the lack of remorse, which is, I think, a good thing. I think it will hopefully get more people to actually watch this film and become more educated on what happened. After thinking about it for a long time, I think that Killers of the Flower Moon is Scorsese's best work in terms of honing the craft. I still think that Goodfellas is my favorite of his works and one of my favorite films of all time. But I think that Killers of the Flower Moon really showcases just how brilliant Scorsese is and how meticulous he is with his shots, where everything is set up, the pacing, the tone of it is all it's taken care of. There's great care put into this film. You can tell that Scorsese is passionate about this story and wants to be respectful while also showing and being honest about what happened. The score, the cinematography, the acting, the all-encompassing package that is this film, I really do think that it's his best work. Unfortunately, I think that this is a film that I don't think it's going to win. I don't think it's going to win Best Picture. And maybe it'll win Best Director. I think my number one is giving it some tough competition, unfortunately. But I think that it's deserving. It's a little bit of a bummer that this is going to be another film that Scorsese just knocked out of the park that's probably not going to get much recognition. But at least, hopefully, if we can cross our fingers and toes, hopefully Lily Gladstone will get her Oscar, and we can at least say we got a Best Actress win with Lily. Imagine being 81 years old, and at 81 years old, you're only getting better. Like, imagine consistently becoming your best and best and best and best and best self. And now you're 81 years old, and it's like you've peaked even higher than you already were. You keep climbing the mountain. You're only going up. I can't even fathom that. I feel like I'm at rock bottom right now, and I'm like 28. So to be 81 and to be as accomplished and fucking brilliant as Martin Scorsese, like, round of applause for that man. All right. I think you guys know what my number one is, because it's a lot of people's number one this year, and I had to wait a long time to see it. I didn't get to have the Barbenheimer experience that I thought I would. So I saw Oppenheimer a lot later, and I'm just so glad that I caught it, because this movie deserves all of the praise and all of the awards. So yes, my number one is Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, the king himself. This is what I mean when I say that if Killers of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer win for Best Director or Best Picture, I'm very happy, because I think the two of them as directors are criminally undervalued with the Academy. I think that they deserve so much more than what they get with them. So if either one of them stack up on the awards, I will be very, very happy, because I think it's overdue for either one of them. But Oppenheimer is the story of Robert Oppenheimer, who is the father of the atomic bomb. The story definitely focuses on the actual development of the bomb during World War II. And then we get cuts of flashbacks to after that, when the Cold War is starting. And you're starting to see the side of Robert Oppenheimer who is more hesitant about these weapons of mass destruction, who has different feelings about the bomb, the atomic bomb, than he had while it was being built during World War II. But this is a film that also focuses on Louis Strauss, who is, honestly, I don't even fucking know this man. He's like some sort of head man. I want to say head boy, like he's a little, okay. He's some important high up guy who knows the president, and he is under some sort of, not a trial, but like a hearing after the war, as the Cold War time is starting. The subject of Oppenheimer's security clearance and being able to publicly discuss matters of war and defense has been put in question. And so Strauss is kind of discussed as someone who brought Oppenheimer into the fold after World War II to focus on like hydrogen bombs and the Cold War. So they kind of, there is some sort of trial hearing, whatever you want to call it, where they kind of discuss with Strauss, like, how did you meet Oppenheimer? Why did you decide to let him join? And blah, 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 blah. I will say that this is probably Robert Downey Jr.'s best performance since Iron Man, which I know is not that long ago. I think that Iron Man is his best role, his best performance he's ever had. But I think that this is something that shows the versatility of Robert Downey Jr. I think that we have seen him as Tony Stark for far too long. So now that he's starting to get into some other roles, you're like, yes, this is the Robert Downey Jr. I knew and I loved. And I'm happy to have him back in the world of other films. Enough about Robert Downey Jr. because we all know the star of the show here is Cillian Murphy. This is what I'm saying, we're like, best actor, I would be happy if it was Paul Giamatti, but Cillian Murphy is deserving of this win. There's no way he won't be nominated, but he should win for best actor. What I really like about this film that Cillian Murphy is a part of is there is a quietness to it, even though this is a film about the development of this bomb, this huge atomic bomb, something so loud, so big. The film is so quiet. The discussions between our characters are very soft. It feels like you're in the room sitting with them and they're talking to you. When some actors are in scenes, they have like this acting voice where it feels very projected and loud. This is not the case with this film. It is very quiet in that way, which I loved because it made the whole process of building this bomb and how important it was at the time. You feel like you're a part of it. You feel like you're in these hush-hush conversations. You feel like you're in the room when something important is happening and everybody else has no idea what's going on. But what Cillian Murphy does so well is he shows the inner turmoil that Oppenheimer is said to have, where he is doing his job and he is creating this bomb because he can, and he has, the brain and the team around him to make it happen. But also the denial that he's facing, where it's like, I'm just doing my job. What they do with the bomb is not my call. And having that conflict and that turmoil of like, I created something that's going to kill so many people. I'm not the one that dropped it. I'm not the one that's making the call on where it goes or how they approach warning people or whatever. I'm not in charge of that. All I'm doing is making it. So it's not really on me. And you can tell that that's something that he is thinking throughout the creation of it. But then once it actually happens and the aftermath of the bomb, you can see where he starts to have a huge change of heart. But again, what I think this film does really well is it doesn't make you empathize with the character. Like, we know that Oppenheimer made a decision, made a choice. Like, obviously with every choice there are complexities, but like, you're not sitting here like, oh no, I understand why you dropped that bomb and killed all those people. It's okay. We forgive you. That's not what Nolan's trying to do here, I don't think. It's just trying to show the complexity of what was being made, the discussions surrounding it while it was being made, Is it even necessary to use it at this point? Blah, blah, blah. You know, all of that stuff. Emily Blunt does a great job at playing a mom that seems to hate her children. Florence Pugh is just a badass bitch. My God, she is gorgeous. It's a very stacked cast. You're going to see so many faces in here that you're like, oh, I know them from something, but that's besides the point. There are just a couple things that I want to talk about that I think makes Oppenheimer my favorite film of the year. One, the score. If you are listening to a Christopher Nolan film, you know that there's going to be a badass score, and this one delivers. It was harrowing. It was tense. My God, there are so many scenes where you have this build up and build up and build up of music. It's getting louder. It's getting louder. Your heart is racing. My freaking cheeks were clenched. I'm sitting there like, oh my God. It's the music that's like amplifying the experience and making you feel the freaking nerve-wracking emotions that these characters are facing in certain scenes. It's so good. The cinematography, absolutely fantastic, beautiful. I want to go ahead and remind everybody that Christopher Nolan advocated for no CGI in this film. So some of these shots, you will sit there and wonder how the fuck they did that. How did you do this when this was not, you had no CGI? You will think about it. And I sit there and I think about it, and it makes me fall in love with the craft all over again, because I love seeing directors have to think on their feet with certain shots and come up with these different ideas so that they don't rely on CGI. It's masterful, and Christopher Nolan does that time and time again in Oppenheimer. I think that the pacing is great. This is a 3-hour movie that does not feel like 3 hours to me. I think that it goes by super fast. But I think where this movie thrives is Christopher Nolan has a relationship with Cillian Murphy. He's worked with him in the past, and they seem to understand each other well. And Nolan knows when to hold a scene on Cillian. He puts his whole trust in Cillian to just deliver this shot. And it happens so many times where we linger on Cillian, and you can feel every emotion that Oppenheimer must be feeling in the moment. The last shot of the film is arguably one of my favorite shots I've ever seen. I think that it's so well done. It's not going to be for everybody because it's a very technical film. I think it talks a lot about it's just a lot of guys in a room talking about math, talking about science, and a lot of it can just right over your head sometimes, me included. I'm just nodding along like, yeah, for sure, A plus B. I think that it's about as accessible as it can be with a bunch of men sitting in the room doing math. I think that for some people, it may feel a little self-important, but I ate it up. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was my favorite movie of 2023. Thank you for listening to my top 5 and letting me ramble about my favorites. I am hoping to have more of a discussion about the Oscar nominations when they come out on the 29th. So we've got some time, a little over a week until the Oscar nominations drop. And I'm thinking about potentially doing a live reactions to the Oscar nominations. You'll have to let me know if that's something you would be interested in. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later with the next one.